J-Lo like was like his ex-girlfriend. And, okay,
Right.
well, maybe we shouldn't trust her opinion. And it's like now deciding she's like warning people against Trump. I'm
Is
like,
it the
well, wait a
Babylon
second.
Bee?
So how many people did she warn against Diddy?
Right.
Oh, zero.
Puff sues Diageo. A hotel video from 10 years earlier is put out. Now people don't like Puff. And then Diageo, they go in with the most insane media takedown I've ever seen, all the way to not just the media, but not allowing a person to get bond for $50 million. There's people with actual murders that are at home on bond and not a $50 million bond.
Keep in mind that this case is only as public facing as it is because it serves the interests of the 1% elite, right? We'll keep all this stuff in the front of our brains, distract us with this information about him and all of Black Hollywood being implicated. That's fine, throw them to the dogs. But Jeffrey Epstein, none of that stuff is getting nearly as much attention, and it is very much intentional.
But back when you hosted The Apprentice, you mentioned once in 2012 that Diddy was a good friend of yours back then. He has since found himself in some very serious legal trouble. Would you ever consider pardoning him?
Well, nobody's asked. You had to be the one to ask, Peter, but nobody's asked. But I know people are thinking about it. I know they're thinking about it.
So now, Kanye West and Elon Musk are both stirring the pot, and they're not being subtle about it. According to them, Diddy's legal storm isn't just about Diddy. It's a much bigger play unfolding behind the scenes. They believe this entire takedown is meant to distract the public from the Epstein case, which has started heating up again after years of silence. The timing? Suspicious, to say the least. But Kanye didn't stop there. He pointed the finger at Diageo, the global liquor giant that helped Diddy build his spirits empire with brands like Ciroc and De Leon. Kanye claims Diddy challenged the wrong power players, and that Diageo retaliated hard. According to him, the moment Diddy pushed back, they reminded him who's really in control, not just in business, but in how the narrative gets shaped.
I had to send my people down to Mexico. They went down to Mexico, and when they got down there, they found out that there was 0 agave planted for De Leon. So there was no plan for us to be successful. There was no equal treatment. The other brands, they had agave planted. They had no agave planted for me. And sometimes you have to go check even your partners to see what's really going on. And so when I saw that, I was like, nah, I'm gonna fight because it's bigger than me.
Now let's be clear. None of this means Diddy is innocent. Far from it. There's a mountain of disturbing claims and evidence suggesting he may very well belong behind bars. But here's what has people raising their eyebrows. It's not just what's happening, it's when it's happening. Kanye West and Elon Musk aren't defending Diddy's actions. They're questioning the timing. Because let's face it, the industry didn't just wake up one day shocked by what Diddy was doing. They knew. A lot of people did. Some even helped him build the very empire now being investigated. But nobody spoke out until Cassie filed that lawsuit. And then suddenly, everything came crashing down. Even wilder, some of the same powerful people who are now panicking over the Epstein files, the ones trying to get their names removed from anything linked to that case, are the very people who once backed Diddy, celebrated him, and made millions off his success. So now that the Epstein documents are bubbling back into the spotlight, Diddy's scandal just happens to explode in the media. It's almost too perfect. A massive celebrity trial to drown out questions about who flew on which private island-bound jets. So the real question is, was Diddy's fall time to distract us from something bigger? And who exactly is working behind the scenes to keep their names off both the Diddy case and the Epstein files? There's a lot to unpack here, so let's dig deeper.
And don't you find it ironic, Miranda, that once again they take that same strategy out, and that is change the conversation? Okay, the timing of the P. Diddy arrest, please. They must have had the P. Diddy arrest on the shelf, waiting to take it off the shelf for when they needed it.
Let's be real. The entire Diddy situation has spiraled into something so wild, it's honestly hard to tell what's true anymore and what's just noise blasted through the media echo chamber. What started as serious allegations has now become a full-blown pop culture circus. We've got memes, TikToks, reaction videos. The internet's treating this like a reality show, not a criminal case. And yeah, with some of the insane details floating around, It's almost impossible not to laugh or be totally stunned. But here's where it gets weird. The deeper you dig, the more suspicious it all starts to feel. It's like we're being spoon-fed the craziest, nastiest headlines, all while the media conveniently avoids the questions that actually matter. Because no one's talking about this. How does one man, even someone as wealthy and powerful as Diddy, pull off something that sounds like a full-scale criminal empire, completely alone? We're talking serious stuff here. Allegations of trafficking, extortion, blackmail, money laundering, and even blowing up cars. That's not solo work. That's the kind of activity that usually involves a network, a structure. Yet somehow Diddy is the only person facing a RICO charge. Now, if you know anything about RICO, you know it's not for lone wolves. It's designed to target organized crime, entire groups operating together. So how does someone get hit with a RICO indictment with no co-defendants, no other names publicly charged, and no accomplices brought in? That's the part that should make us stop and ask, who else was involved, and why are they being protected?
Prosecutors allege his business empire was also a criminal enterprise, making him millions and enabling decades of criminal activity.
Basically, the government's got to prove that there was an enterprise. They then have to show that there was a pattern of activity.
That pattern must include at least 2 predicate acts, related crimes committed by Combs and others within 10 years to prove a racketeering conspiracy.
And then they have to show, of course, that the defendant, that is Mr. Combs, that there was a hierarchy, a structure involved, and that Mr. Combs either ran it or participated in it along with other conspirators.
So the big question still hangs in the air. Where are all the other players? Because let's be honest, if everything being alleged is true, Diddy couldn't have pulled this off alone. Yes, some names have surfaced in civil lawsuits filed by Diddy's accusers. And of course, social media has been in overdrive, piecing together potential connections, dropping receipts, and stirring up conversation. But here's where things get even murkier. A growing number of people are starting to believe that Diddy might not have even been the top dog. That instead, he was just the face, a middleman for something much bigger and more dangerous operating behind the scenes. If that's the case, then who was really in charge? Who was pulling the strings? And more importantly, why haven't they been named, indicted, or even questioned?
To start his own company called Arista Records in 1974. Now, while he's going through, the CBS sues him to recover some of the funds. He's not indicted or charged with any crime, including the broader allegation on payola-related misconduct. So the relationship between and Diddy's interesting because when Diddy's 23 years old, he's making a name for himself. Gave him $15 million to start Bad Boy Records. And then later on, they did even a bigger deal where $50 million advance on future earnings. This is 5 years later in 1998. $6 million upfront payment, $700,000 annual salary, and a state-of-the-art recording studio. We're talking a $2 million recording studio. This is when he went after Faith Evans. He got Biggie in the early 90s. This is when it started. But there's a relationship with, and it's interesting because later on, they say something may have happened here because Shook said taught him the bad habit.
And here's where things really start to raise eyebrows. If Diddy was truly involved in blackmailing some of the most powerful people in the world, as several lawsuits and reports now suggest, then logic says he wasn't acting alone. You don't run that kind of operation solo. There would have had to be others in the room, people who helped cover it up, benefited from it, or pulled strings in the background. And yet, no one's naming names. There have been no high-profile raids on music executives, no federal subpoenas served to powerful insiders. Not to people like Jimmy Iovine, Ron Burkle, or other major figures who helped build Diddy's empire brick by brick. It's almost like they've all been handed a script. Act like you barely knew him. Pretend none of this ever happened. Meanwhile, Diddy's the one in the spotlight, getting dragged through the mud, while the very people who funded, elevated, and protected him are nowhere to be found. How convenient.
A lot of people are curious about the status of P. Diddy.
Status of what?
P. Diddy. Diddy.
Puffy. The status of Puffy.
What do you make of that situation? All right. No comment from on P. Diddy. You're a major influence on the career of P. Diddy. Have you spoken to him since the federal raid? Have you spoken to Sean Combs? Any comment? Any comments about Diddy? He credits you as one of his mentors.
And now, right in the center of the storm, it's just Diddy, standing alone under the harsh spotlight, while the much bigger machine behind him remains untouched. Instead of real journalism asking hard questions about how this all came to be, the media's feeding the public a steady diet of shock value headlines: male escorts, freak-offs, baby oil. The most sensational and scandalous details get plastered everywhere, while the actual structure, the system that enabled it all, stays hidden in the shadows. It's Distraction 101, and honestly, it feels intentional. And that's exactly what Kanye West has been saying, loudly. Now, trying to figure out where Kanye really stands on Diddy is like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. One minute he's accusing Diddy of being a fed, the next he's praising him as a mentor. But lately, Kanye's theory has gotten more focused. And it's not about justice for the victims. He thinks this is about power, control, and payback. In Kanye's view, the system isn't going after Diddy because they suddenly care about morality. They're going after him because he stepped out of line. He challenged the very people who helped make him rich, and that was his fatal mistake. More specifically, Kanye points to Diddy's lawsuit against Diageo, the massive liquor conglomerate that partnered with him on brands like Ciroc and De Leon. For years, it was a match made in money. Diddy was the face, the brand, the energy. Diageo was the power behind the curtain. Together, they brought in billions. And for a while, everyone was winning. But once Diddy decided to publicly accuse Diageo of racism and breach of contract, everything changed. And Kanye believes that's when the gloves came off.
Everyone come together, let's do a toast to this monumentous moment.
Yes, this is gonna
you know,
be a special moment.
From Harlem to Mexico, I'm from Harlem, I'm from the inner cities of Harlem, and I made it this far. This is a very proud day for me, you know what I'm saying? And I want to teach people the art of tequila, that it's an art. It's a patience to it. Yes, it doesn't always have to be shot and be decadent. It can be sophisticated, and that's what De Leon represents. Luxury and sophistication.
In 2023, things took a serious turn when Diddy filed a lawsuit against Diageo, the global liquor giant behind brands like Guinness, Johnnie Walker, and more. But this wasn't just a business disagreement over contracts and profits. Diddy was accusing Diageo of racial discrimination. He claimed that while the company publicly preached diversity and partnership, behind the scenes, they were undermining his brands, treating them as urban labels, and intentionally stunting their growth, while pouring resources into white-owned brands. According to Diddy, Diageo never gave Ciroc and De Leon the same support or shelf space. And instead of seeing his products as luxury or premium, they boxed them in, pushed them only to certain neighborhoods, and treated them as niche, not mainstream. But here's what really made this explosive. Diddy didn't just whisper these accusations behind closed doors. He went public, and he went hard, taking on one of the most powerful conglomerates in the liquor industry, loudly, legally, and unapologetically. And many believe that's exactly when the walls started closing in around him.
National alcoholic beverage company. It's based in London. It is a major distributor of Scotch whiskey, producing major brands like Johnnie Walker, but they also have other liquors in their portfolio over the years. A lot of brands: Ciroc, Smirnoff, Bailey's, Tanqueray. They also own Guinness. Lawsuit. I want you to take a look at some of the first lines of this lawsuit that he filed against Diageo. It was filed on behalf of Combs Wine and Spirits LLC. It reads, quote, "Cloaking itself in the language of diversity and equality is good for Diageo's business, but it is a lie. While Diageo may conspicuously include images of its black partners in advertising materials and press releases, its words only provide the illusion of inclusion. As Combs Wines and Sean Combs have experienced firsthand, Diageo, by and through its parent company's chief executive officer, Ivan Menendez, has proven unwilling to treat its black partners equally, even when explicitly required by contract to do so." The complaint goes on to say that rather than equal treatment, Diageo has treated Mr. Combs and his brands worse than others because he is black. Diageo has typecasted Ciroc and De Leon, apparently deciding they are black brands that should be targeted only to urban consumers. Diageo's president of Reserve and New Business, Stephen Rust, directly acknowledged the company's racist undertones in 2019, telling Mr. Combs that some within Diageo's leadership resented him for making too much money. He also admitted that Mr. Combs' race was part of the reason Diageo limited the neighborhoods where the Combs brands were distributed. If Mr. Combs were Martha Stewart, Mr. Russ said, things would be different.
And according to Kanye, that's the moment everything changed. That's when the gloves came off. Once Diddy went after Diageo, not just privately, but in a very public, very aggressive legal attack, Kanye believes the powers that be decided enough was enough. From that point on, it wasn't just about contracts or liquor brands anymore. It was about sending a message: step out of line, and we'll tear everything down.
So let me explain to you why I stand by Puff. When I went against Adidas got my bank to freeze my accounts right before tax time. From the way I understand that, you evade taxes, you can go to prison. So I believe Adidas tried to put me in prison for not abiding by their contract. So watch this. Puff sues Diageo. A hotel video from 10 years earlier is put out. Now people don't like Puff. And then Diageo, they go in with the most insane media takedown I've ever seen, all the way to not just the media, but not allowing a person to get bombed for $50 million. There's people with actual murders that are at home on bond and not a $50 million bond, right? So there's something that just feels like it's a public lynching, and it also feels like there's something where they try to do the same thing to me. And that's my stance on that.
So here's Kanye's take in plain terms. The industry didn't turn on Diddy because of some moral awakening. They turned on him because he got too bold and forgot who really holds the leash. As long as you stay in your lane, make money, keep your mouth shut, and don't challenge the system. Hollywood doesn't care what you do behind closed doors. They'll look the other way every time. But the moment Diddy went after Diageo, publicly challenging one of the industry's biggest corporate giants, he became a problem, a liability, a threat to the power structure that helped make him rich in the first place. And Kanye, he's connecting the dots to his own story. The time his bank accounts got frozen after just one tweet. His point is simple: cross your corporate masters and they'll come for you. They'll dig up every skeleton you've got and leak it to the press, just to make sure you're buried under your own scandal. Now let's be absolutely clear here. None of this justifies what Diddy is accused of. The stories from Cassie and other alleged victims are horrifying. Even if half of it is true, he needs to be held fully accountable. But what's just as disturbing is how long this was allowed to happen. Powerful people, CEOs, record label execs, maybe even politicians, were all in the mix. They knew, they saw, and instead of stopping it, they funded it, promoted it, rewarded it. They gave Diddy awards, platforms, magazine covers, and the spotlight, while he allegedly ran a criminal operation in plain sight. So no, this outrage didn't come from compassion. It came from Diddy breaking ranks. It came the moment he turned on the people who once protected him. That's when the lawsuits dropped. That's when the raids began. That's when the media dogpile kicked off. So yeah, Diddy is absolutely responsible for his own actions. But the system around him, it's just as guilty. And it only flipped on him once he stopped being useful. And maybe the wildest part? All those celebrities who once partied with Diddy, collaborated with him, and called him a friend. Suddenly they've gone radio silent, pretending like they barely even knew the guy.
Jay-Z's lawyer, Alex Spiro, went on to make the statement to say that there is no friendship or long-time bond here. Just because they knew each other or know each other doesn't mean anything. Unless we are living in the Twilight Zone, we all know that that statement is completely false. I mean, these guys have been in pictures with each other for over 20 years. If they don't have a friendship, I don't know what you call it.
And just when you thought it couldn't get messier, Elon Musk jumps into the conversation. Yep, Elon's not holding back either. He's been calling out the hypocrisy loud and clear, even going so far as to name names. One of the names he dropped, Jennifer Lopez. Now, J-Lo was publicly linked to Diddy back in the day. They were photographed together, partied together. They were one of the most talked about couples at the time. But now, she's acting like she was never even in the same room with him. According to Elon, this is exactly the problem. Everyone wants to distance themselves now that Diddy's under fire, even though they were more than happy to ride the wave when he was on top. So when the heat comes, the story changes. Suddenly it's Diddy who?
J-Lo was like his ex-girlfriend, and it's like now deciding she's like warning people against Trump. I'm like, well, wait a second. So how many people did she warn against Diddy?
Right.
Oh, 0. Okay.
Right.
Well, maybe we shouldn't trust her opinion.
You know?
Sounds rough, man.
Well, it's just amazing how many people in the Diddy party list that are supporting Kamala. Too.
Yeah, seriously, it's like insane.
Publicly, openly, like all in.
Yes. It's like.
And what's even more unsettling is how familiar this pattern feels. Just take a look at the Epstein case. He passed away in custody under controversial circumstances, and Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted for arranging inappropriate relationships between high-profile individuals and underage girls. But here's the question nobody wants to answer. Who are those high-profile individuals? Because to this day, the client list remains sealed. We've never seen the full list of names. And the people most frequently seen with Epstein, world leaders, celebrities, business moguls, have largely remained silent. No public accountability, no follow-up investigations, just nothing. It's like the system hit the snooze button, protecting power while ignoring the bigger story.
Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah. I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know it. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world.
And now, looking at the Diddy situation, it's starting to feel all too familiar. Almost like we've seen this script before. He's being positioned as the fall guy, while the elite figures who enabled and profited from his rise quietly step back, clean hands and zipped lips. When you zoom out, this starts looking less like justice unfolding, and more like a carefully timed takedown. Was this all part of a plan? Did the dominoes start falling when Diddy challenged Diageo and upset the wrong power players? Because just like with the Epstein scandal, we see a pattern. One person gets publicly dragged, while the larger network stays untouched, invisible, insulated, and very much in control. So now the big question becomes, is Diddy's trial just a smokescreen to distract us from those resurfacing Epstein files? Or is there something deeper, a shared web of influence behind both stories? Because something isn't adding up, and maybe it's time more people started asking the hard questions. What do you think? Was this about justice, or was it really about control? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. This story, far from over.